today? We'll pick it up? No. Oh, this was going to cover it. No, it's not that.
Okay, so I think I'll just continue to add people as they join. But I think we're good to start. So I just want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And I want to thank you so much for joining us for the second webinar in our project management series. And also special thanks to our three amazing speakers, Susanna, Stephanie, and Collins, for accepting our invitation. I understand that some of you may be new to the Work Commission Environmental Law in our early career specialist group, so I'll just briefly say a few words about them. As you are aware, the Work Commission is a network of experts who's volunteering their knowledge and services to IUCN. And within the Commission, there are several specialist groups focusing on different areas from climate change law to biodiversity law. And the Early Career Specialist Group provides a platform for early and mid-career environmental lawyers, policy experts, and researchers to develop innovative solutions to our environmental challenges and also to fully engage in the work of the Commission. We have, in general, 4 core projects. They are focused on different aspects of environmental law. The first one is on environmental law research, a second one on partnerships and networks, a third one on science policy interfaces and environmental rule of law, and a fourth project which is a mentorship program. So if you have any questions about our work or the projects or are not yet sure how to get engaged, please do not hesitate to send me a message. I'll just drop my contact information in the chat. And just to give you a brief overview of this webinar series, the idea for the series derived from discussions we've been having with early and mid-career environmental law professionals about the struggles and challenges that we face managing projects in our day-to-day academic, policy, and advocacy work. And project management specifically is often a gap in our legal education. So the idea for this series, which will hopefully be an ongoing initiative until 2025, which is the term for our specialist group, and we'll seek to bridge some of these capacity gaps. And this webinar today will be held in English and will be recorded so that our members in Asia Pacific can watch it at a later stage. And without further ado, I'm pleased to give the floor to Professor Collins, who will kick us off. And Professor Collins, I shared the bios with you, but he's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya with a PhD in law from the University of Nairobi. He's also currently an associate professor of law and associate dean in the Faculty of Law, and research director of the Center of Advanced Studies in Environmental Law and Policy at the University of Nairobi. Professor Odoti also has vast experience in project management and having served as a program manager and having run several donor-funded projects. So over to you, Professor Collins. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Marina, and good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good day, everybody. It's an extreme pleasure to be here and to be able to share a few ideas around project management. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. I just retweaked the title of my presentation a little bit to designing and implementing successful environmental cooperation projects, and spoke about some tips. So I will mix issues in terms of some ideas of things that I've learned over the years, or from, I think, conceptual issues that each of us should be able to know in terms of project management. My presentation will focus on 2 types of projects, either projects that you run as an academic in an university setup, or projects that you run in a research organization outside an academic process. So, because the skills are basically the same. On this slide, you see this outline for my presentation. Just a quick conversation about why should we design projects for international environmental law and that seek to advance issues of environmental management. Secondly, some conversation about how to develop those project proposals. Questions about, so where do I get the money? And once you get the money, how do you then manage the project? And then just a few tips in terms of things to keep in mind. I hope I can do this in the next 20 to 25 minutes. If I exceed that time, Marina, please stop me. In preparing for this discussion, I think 2 days ago, I picked the words from the Rio Declaration of 1992, especially Principle 7. And if you read Principle 7, a lot of the times we look at Principle 7 only in the context of the cooperation between states. But if you look at it, I think there are things that you will see. And one of the critical things that you see in terms of Principle 7 is the fact that we all contribute to environmental degradation. And we all need to collaborate in providing solutions for it. While that principle speaks about common but differentiated responsibility of states, I think it gives impetus for collaboration across different actors, making the point that if you would like to solve environmental issues, looking through innovative solutions, especially in light of the recent discussions, I think within the context of UNEP, the conversation about the triple planetary crisis, we've just come back from the COP in Egypt, looking at how to advance the conversation around the climate agenda. Before then, I think conversations about nature and biodiversity loss, rise to nature, conversations about pollution, whether it is air, whether it is water, whether it is land pollution. Each of them challenges us in our different disciplines, in our different countries, to be able to provide innovative solutions for them. And I think the reasons why we design different projects, different proposals, is to be able to ensure that as we try to seek solutions for these problems, we do so in a collaborative manner. We do so in a manner that builds on our different lived experiences and builds on our context. The challenges, we're just talking, a few of us just before the meeting started. Marina is in Portugal currently. Another colleague is in Spain, going to Mexico tomorrow. I am in Kenya. So thinking about resolving, for example, the climate crisis and borrowing from the experience of Portugal, from the experience of Kenya, from the experience of Spain or Mexico or Italy, enables you to be able to ensure that the solutions that you actually design are solutions that are practical, solutions that are implementable, and solutions that will address the global environmental issues. So for me, that's the rationale as to why eventually, as you think about designing projects to resolve the global the problems of environment, always think global, because the problems that we have are global in nature. But as you do so, pay attention to the particularity of the different regions. So how do we get partners? How do we ensure that we are solving problems that affect different societies and different communities and contexts? I think while the majority of us are early or middle career professionals, all of us have gone through university education, and you will remember the whole process of developing your proposal during your academic studies. You remember the challenges of designing a problem statement. And when you thought you had designed the problem statement, somebody then asked you, so what's your theoretical framework? Then you then move to your methodology, you then move to your objectives and questions. Those same lessons are critical for us in terms of proposal development, because the idea, the mindsets required for developing a proposal is almost similar mindsets that you used when you're doing your postgraduate studies. The second is that as you develop a proposal for fundraising and eventually for implementing projects, you need to have knowledge of international environmental law. You need to have knowledge of the challenges for international environmental governance, but you also need to have knowledge about the developments and current trends, because a lot of the proposals, a lot of the funders that come out to seek for ideas are seeking ideas not based on theory. They are seeking ideas not based on abstract, but they're seeking ideas based on the need to solve existing problems. So therefore, being clear in terms of what's the problem that they're seeking to solve, the place of the proposal, the call for proposals that the funder has issued. The first thing that anytime you see a funding proposal, read it carefully to ask yourself, so what is it that is disturbing this funder? Why would they put their money in this call? And you need to then be clear in terms of what's your value proposition. What are you telling them in terms of what you'd like, how you'd like to solve the problem? If everybody will be solving the same problem, why should yours be the one being funded and not the other? The question about innovativeness, how innovative is yours? Is it innovative in terms of the approach? Is it innovative in terms of the collaborators you're having? Is it innovative because it is cost effective? So you must always ask yourself, so what's my comparative advantage as I'm developing this? Why should somebody put my money in it? Next, I think it's important that you keep in mind the key requirements for proposal development. A lot of the times, people fall off at the last minute for various reasons. One, you are required to have partners The proposal says you must have partners from every continent. The deadline is 2 weeks. How do you get a partner from Europe? How do you get a partner from Africa? How do you get a partner from Asia? How do you get a partner from Latin America? So therefore, the place of networks, such as the IUCN, the World Commission Environmental Law, where we are now speaking on, becomes important, because then through that, you can reach out and be able to get those partners quickly. Sometimes you will fall off because a partner promised you, they will send you a letter of support. That letter of support does not come, and you've done all the technical documents. So unfortunately, you must then follow. So keeping that at the back of your mind as you work through the proposal development process is critical. Next, thinking about the format of the proposal. I know getting involved in a proposal writing process with colleagues from, I think, around 10 countries, and we had a sound idea. Our document was beyond the required limit. So the process of reducing it to the exact size, negotiating with people who say, no, you can't get out my idea, you can't reduce this, yet somebody had to put it into a format of a certain number of words. I think thinking through that is extremely important. You then need to worry about, so what is the process by which we will be able to discuss and agree on the idea? How will the writing process be? Who is in charge of that process? That's important. A lot of us lawyers like words. We are very poor in finances and administrative aspects. We think it will do itself. So thinking through the financial processes of the proposal. Do you have an accountant who will do the maths? Do you have somebody experienced in terms of developing budgets who will do the budget for you? How do you translate your ideas into monies? And is the financial aspects competitive? Is it believable? Is it realistic? And then lastly, who is responsible for dotting the T's and closing the I's, just ensuring that all the last things have been done. So thinking through this at the start and setting aside time, resources, and responsibility ensures that your proposal development process becomes interesting and not challenging. In this slide, I put something that we all know in terms of the key parts of the proposal, and I'll just speak about each of them fairly quickly. Thinking through a title of the proposal, which is sharp, catchy, and communicative. In that proposal that we wrote, our colleague from Sweden developed an abbreviation that was extremely interesting. So everybody improve, because it's something about chemicals. We're discussing with Marina that something about chemicals management, and it says it's about improving the process, and he gave it the full word. So catchy, sharp, and communicative, because eventually a proposal is a selling document. So you must be able to speak to people's minds in terms of the content, but also speak to their heart in terms of the aesthetics. Then the next part, which you write last, but which your reviewers read first, is the executive summary. That gives them, because they receive many proposals. So the first one to get as a reviewer, a quick snapshot of what is this proposal about. If they don't get involved with convincing the executive summary, it does not matter how well the other sections are. The chances you may never get beyond the first round is extremely high. So thinking through about how you write more with less, more stuff with less words. The most important part of a proposal, in my view, though, just like for your studies, is the problem statement. What problem are you seeking to solve? How will you solve it? You are part 5 for the methodology. What are the key objectives that you seek to achieve? And we all know, we all suffered in terms of objectives, because we find it the easiest to write during our student days, because you just put words, because nobody will hold you accountable. For the proposal that you're seeking for a funder, those objectives are not just words. They are things that you are going to achieve. So they must be in the language of outcomes. Are there things that you can achieve? Are there things that can be evaluated? Then thereafter you go to your budget. Then lastly, sustainability. But for me, the critical thing is to keep in mind clear problem statement, clear objectives in terms of the thing, how you are going to achieve those things, and then the methodology. And are those methodology efficient? Are they effective? Are they innovative? That's the thing that your typical funder will be looking for. Please remember the things you see on that screen. I would just like to stress 2 things. Number 1 is that while proposal development is an art, all of us can develop the skill. In some organizations, you hear people who have been hired just to develop proposals. I want to encourage all of us to learn how to develop proposals as we go on, because everybody can do it. And if you're relying only on people to write it for you, invariably, sometimes they'll not turn your good ideas into the things you'd like to do. Secondly, remember that your proposal has two purposes. It's a fundraising tool, but it's also a project document. So it's a fundraising tool to raise resources, but if you are successful, it is what will guide you in project implementation and assessing results. So keep that in mind and develop it well. When you're finishing, ask yourself, does this proposal convey the message? If somebody read it, does it say what I intended it to say? Does it show that what I want to do is urgent and important? Is it too wordy, or is it just the right language? Have I ensured that I've gotten rid of grammar? Have I dealt with my log frames? Have I dealt with my work plan? Have I dealt with my budgets? Do they speak to each other? Because if two people write the log frame and the budget and another person writes the text, a lot of the times they may not be communicating. So please ensure there's coherence between the document, because that's what will then help the person who is writing. So that's in terms of proposal development. A good proposal itself is not sufficient. That proposal must be funded, because it's only when it is funded that you can then be able to execute the ideas. Internationally, there's increased competition for resources. If you talk to colleagues, they will tell you there's less and less money. There's more and more competition. A lot of the people who fail to get their grants because of three main things. Number one, they did not factor in sufficient time and sufficient staff to be able to develop the document. You just assume, it is 3 months. Then you discover it is 3 hours remaining. Then you're trying to patch up things. The second, they don't succeed because of competition. You have a good document, but assuming we're 100 on this call and there are only 10 grants, so it means 90 of us will be unsuccessful. So remember, just 10%. But the third, which is what this slide's about, is difficulty in identifying grant sources and grant opportunities. Knowing who is funding what and when is extremely important. And one of the best ways to do it is to please subscribe to fundraising and funding databases. The EU, for example, has a database. A lot of the bilaterals have databases. So please look for those and subscribe to them. Secondly, please network and collaborate. Your colleague in Asia may hear about a funding opportunity that requires collaboration. They share with you. Your colleague in Africa may hear about something. So please network. Please inquire, write to the funding partners. I would like to know, do you have funding opportunities? Thirdly, please segregate your sources. Talk to senior researchers, those who've been there before. And if you're in a university, what's the role of your university and the role of your institutional fundraising officers? The people who will then be able to identify funding sources for you. But I think looking through online and being able to identify the key sources, subscribing to them so that you'll always get an alert anytime there's a new funding. IDRC, for example, has like 3 calls every year. Knowing when those calls are going to come, the project cycles, preparing for them. They will even tell you the next call is coming out in the next 3 months on this issue. So preparing in advance is extremely important, but only if you've been able to go to the website and you'll be able to subscribe to IDRC, for example. You have written your funding proposal. 10% of us have been successful. We are all excited. Please celebrate, but only celebrate for a short while, because implementing the grant is the most taxing. A lot of the times when you have money, the greatest issue is going to be burn rate. How do you implement the project successfully? We are currently implementing some project with colleagues in Oslo, and our meeting 2 weeks ago, the concern was we are not working as efficiently as we should. We promised we'll do this by February. We fear we will not. And we're now starting to look at ourselves and say, gosh, the money is there, the time has run out, the ideas are clear, but it's not being implemented. So thinking through the implementation process from initiation to planning to execution to monitoring to closure is important, so that you are on time and you're doing the things that are important. Therefore, skills in planning, skills in project cycle management becomes important. I will skip those stages and then go to enable you manage your programs effectively. I think learning about skills on results-based management. Results-based management is managing for results. It's about going back to the proposal, asking what were the outcomes that I promised? And how will I achieve those outcomes? Those becomes at the end, because at the end of the day, you are going to be assessed based on the extent to which you are accountable and true to the promises that you made. How are you improving your performance? How are you achieving better results? Because it's not about how many activities that you undertake. It's about those activities translate to results. And as you focus on results, are you also having value for money? Are you just throwing money because you want to finish activities? Are you looking for the most expensive venue? Are you looking for how to pay your consultants highly? Or are you doing activities that are efficient, that are effective, that are innovative, and that eventually are helping to solve the global environmental challenges? Are you improving in terms of how you implement projects? Because the next time a funder is looking, they're saying, so what new thing have these people done? Have they done it differently? What value have they added to us as an organization? What value have they added to the recipients? What value have they added to the world? If you can't answer that question, then you are not working on results-based management. Therefore, there are 4 critical things in results-based management. Number 1 is the outcomes. What's the main results you'd like to see at the end of your project, more medium term? So if you have a project of 3 to 5 years, what are the 3 results you'd like to see at the end? Those then get broken into several outputs, which are then much more immediate. Maybe every 6 years you see an output. Then you then undertake activities. There must be causal link, and that's where your theory of change comes in. That's where your result framework come in. How does the activities for which people are giving you money results to some outputs? How do those outputs result to an outcome? And how do we measure the success? And that's where indicators come in, because it is indicators. It is not the activities that help us to measure success. It is the indicators that we set. So invariably, if you're designing the project, a lot of the times people ask you, start from the outputs and then they put for us indicators, because activities can change, but the indicators must be static. What's the evidence? If you say we have been able to improve the environmental condition in Uganda, what's the evidence that you've done so? How do you measure that you are succeeding? What data do you need? How will you collect it? And balance between quantitative vis-a-vis qualitative indicators. So determining a good indicator, and one that will be easy to implement, is critical in terms of project management. I think finally for me, I'm hoping this is the last slide. For all of us, my advice is you will get better by continuously doing. While I told you that around only 10% of grants are successful, you cannot get a grant unless you apply. 90% of the people fail. So failures are normal, and they're building blocks for future successes, because you will know next time what you need to do differently. The next thing is, once you sign the proposal, please stick to the contract terms and the timelines. A lot of the times you talk to donors, they will tell you 50% of the grantees do not submit their reports on time. Forget the content, they don't submit on time. So eventually, if you want to be a good program manager, timelines, delivery. In terms of delivery, when we write proposals, because we're looking for money, we like promising the sun. Then when we come to deliver, even the moon, we don't deliver. So please avoid over-promising and under-delivering. Keep in mind that your success in one project will lead to the donor coming back to you for the second project. So do it well. Because this is in the context of international cooperation, when you're doing projects across countries, across continents, please remember your collaborators rely on you. Don't let them down. And lastly, for me, please ensure that you report your results effectively. Please ensure you develop tools for monitoring your implementation process. I want to thank you and look forward to the questions. Thank you very much. Over to you, Marina.
Thank you so much, Collins. It was really great to hear more about, like, from the design phase of a proposal and some like concrete tips on how we can actually take some of those ideas and proposals into action. And I think it was really interesting to hear from you more about the results project-based management, which is something that I think increasingly international organizations, the UN system, are requiring us to be more, like results-oriented in a way that we set up our log frames and our frameworks for implementation. And it was really, really interesting to hear more about that. Now, I think I would just open the floor for questions. So I see that we have like about 50 participants online. So if you want to make a question, just please like raise your hand, or even if you cannot use your mic, feel free to use the chat box. And in the meantime, I think I would like to hear maybe like from your experience, like if a project you've managed. I think that sometimes, like oftentimes, a lot of colleagues struggle a little bit with the log frame when we are developing, for example, like a project proposal. And how do you make it really concrete when we have like all of these ideas and, like everything that we are seeking to achieve? So maybe from your past experiences, if you have any like concrete suggestions on things to consider when you're developing like a project log frame. I think that would be really, really interesting to hear. And Susan in the chat box is asking about what is a log frame. So if you could also give us just an introduction or on what a log frame is and how it fits into like this whole project development idea in different organizations. Over to you, Professor Collins.
Thanks. And to answer both questions, I think I would like to go back to a slide that I think I skipped. If you see this slide, it talks about why is it not showing? Let me see. Yes, you can see that screen.
Yes.
A logical framework. A log frame is what is called a logical framework, or what some people call results framework. So it's your chain of results. Eventually, you get given money to do certain things. Invariably, all of us, all we know is activities that have been given money to hold an international conference. Marina and myself, for example, were speaking about that we just came from a conference in Oslo, the role of international law in addressing environmental challenges. So you'll then be saying, I would like to carry out the following set of activities. Results-based management or project management is not so much concerned with those activities. Those are what they fund, but they're asking themselves, so what? What will those activities help us do? So a logical framework or a result framework is turning the many words, turning the many useful ideas that you'd like to do into a pathway of results, showing that if we give you money, you will use those money to do certain things. And when you do certain things, certain changes will occur. A typical logical framework requires several things. It requires you to be able to identify the end goal of what you'd like to do, what will be called either the project's goal or impacts. What's the project goal? What's the main goal of the project? Our main goal of the project is to mentor younger people, early career. That's your main goal. So how will you achieve that? How will we know you've done that? Then you'll break that main goal into several outcomes, maybe 2, 3, or 4. That for us to show that we've mentored, we'll be able to have done 1, 2, 3 things. Then you ask yourself, so what are the indicators for ensuring that if we achieve these outcomes, then the goal will be realized? Below the goal, below the outcomes are what are called outputs. That is, if I want 3 activities, what is the output of that activity? Maybe the output of the activity is some guidelines on mentorship. So that then becomes your results for it. So then you ask yourself, so if I do 10 activities, maybe 10 activities will lead me to 1 output. So if you look at a typical proposal, Susan, you will see that the proposal will have come up with like around maybe 12 activities. Then you're told for these 12 activities, what results would you like to see? Then you say, I would like to see 3 results. I would like to see increased awareness among students. I would like to see students developing journal articles, and I would like to see students becoming good public speakers, for example. So then you ask yourself, so if those are the outputs you like to see, these are the many activities. So how will we measure that you've made those issues? You'll then be able to identify what are called indicators. Then somebody asks you, so how will you be able to report on those indicators. You say, I will collect certain data. Where will you get it? Some data I will get from government reports. Those then becomes your means of verification. Then you ask, who will collect? Then you assign responsibility. When will it be done? It then becomes timelines. How much resources? So that's then for moving from activity to output. Then for every output, the output will then be able to say, okay, these are the 3 outputs. What do those outputs contribute to? So the outputs may be 4, then the outcomes will be fewer, 2, and maybe the goal 1. So a logical framework translates the project design, the project activities into a pathway of results. So that when somebody says results-based management, at the end of the day, you are promised them only one result. I would like to take people to heaven. So at the end, they're saying, have people gone to heaven? Yes or no? But what are the stages for you to be able to know you are on the journey to heaven? That's what a logical framework does in terms of project. So it's eventually almost similar to your conceptual framework in your proposal for studies. It captures the entire project journey and the entire delivery of your project. So I hope that was helpful, Susan and Marina.
Thank you so much. That was very, very helpful. We also have another question in the chat about funding. So Aisha is asking, what's the usual time frame for new project fundings coming in? Like if you have an idea of like what time of the year you can expect more call for like funding and projects and proposals. And also she's asking whether you could share possibly some of the online databases that you can use to subscribe for funds that you mentioned in your presentation. Over to you.
I think first in terms of timelines, it depends on different donors, but at least from my experience, a lot of the calls that I see a lot of calls between, I think, November to around April. That cycle is a lot of the time that they come in, so that people start working on them, because a lot of the funders there are 2 sets of time for funders. There are some funders that want to start by 1st of October, others want to start by 1st of January. So because of that period, you find a lot of the calls coming in from around October to April. So looking at that 6 months, the 6-month period for the calls, and then the next 6 is for the time that they come in. I will be able to share on chat or send to Marina, and she can circulate around some databases that might be useful for us to think through in terms of possible fundraising sources. Thanks, Marina.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll be happy to share with the participants any additional information. And I think it's also very interesting to maybe keep a look on your own country's like research agencies, because there are usually several calls throughout the year. So for example, I'm from Brazil, and from times to times we get like specific calls on like climate change, biodiversity, and of course, like it depends on where your country is, if it's because the timelines vary, but usually there are some interesting funding opportunities from research agencies. And I think we have another question for Professor Adotis from Alexandra. She was asking whether you could elaborate more on establishing partnerships. So how do you typically approach an expert or an organization when you're thinking about applying for a grant? If you have any suggestions or tips on that, over to you.
I think a very interesting question. Partnership building requires a personal touch invariably, because it requires confidence building to happen. So eventually, it's like networking. How do you network? How do you make new friends? I think it's something that you do personally over time. The chances that if you've met, I was saying, we were with Marina in Oslo. Marina then asked Patricia. Patricia then says, can you join this? So it's much easier to say, yes, I will, because I remember I can't say no to Patricia. But if you get a random email, most of the chances, unless somebody is assured of a grant, like that, do I really want to get involved with Stephanie that I don't even know? So my advice is several-fold. Number one, because you eventually know you will be involved in international grant making, use every opportunity to make friends and establish relationships and develop ideas. Maybe you're working on water and Stephanie is working on water. Start sharing ideas. Start developing that together, because tomorrow when there's a call on water, you can confidently say, we already have shared interests, let's work on it. The second is use your institutions and universities to create networks. because a lot of the times you have universities that have a partnership with certain other universities. So then you are able to then send outward. But then at the absolute worst, in some databases and some calls, they will have a framework. When they get the call, they'll also have a place where people match each other, where you're able to then say, I am looking for a partner on this area. And then somebody says, I am interested. Then people are able to match. That also works. But for me, I think it should always be your last call. Always seek to establish partnerships much earlier. And those partnerships it should happen, if better, out of a long-term collaboration. We've currently just started, and a lot of the times also references. I'll just give two examples. One, we've just finished a project with some colleagues in Sweden. We have collaborated with those colleagues in Sweden for the last 12 years. And they started with just personal touch, writing joint articles, student staff exchange. Some of my students on this call have just come from Sweden, and now we're doing a joint project. The second is we're doing a joint project with colleagues in Copenhagen. I didn't know them, but one of them knew a colleague of ours at the university. They asked, oh, we're looking for somebody who does environmental things. Then they said, oh, please get in touch with Professor Dotte. And then they looked out for that. I think my last one is sometimes also our online presence becomes extremely important, because maybe I'm looking for a colleague in Portugal. And when I search online, I ask myself, so who are the experts that are coming in Portugal? So the things that you do also sell you and also enable you to create networks. Thank you, Marina.
Thank you so much. And I think I need to just also mention that one of the things that we were trying to do in the early career specialist group is a mapping exercise to identify different networks and community of practices in the field of environmental law, because I know that sometimes when you're just starting your career, or even you have some ideas and you have some maybe even some funding opportunities, but then you really need to find partners, and this is oftentimes the struggle. So what we're trying to do is do this mapping exercise so we can perhaps have by the end of year 4 a database that people can go to and at least know the different groups, because there's so much interesting things going on, but at the same time sometimes accessing the information, as Professor Dotte was saying, is a bit difficult, because then it's usually through these connections, and right now in a network such as ours that we have people from all over the world, it's a bit more challenging to just drop an email and have a call, and then so we're just trying to somehow also get some information on networks and communities of practice. So if any colleagues in this call are part of these networks, just also feel free to message me, because we're doing this mapping exercise to just try to connect a little bit more the dots. But thank you so much, Professor Dotte, for this presentation. It was really fantastic. If you can wait until the end of the webinar, we can come back to questions after the next presentation. But thank you so much. And now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Professor Susanna and Stephanie. Susanna is an associate professor of international environmental law and EU law at the University of Macerata in Italy and University of Ávila y Virgili in Spain. And currently she's a Marie Curie Fellow on the project CliMove, Climate Migration from a Gender Perspective. And she has done truly incredible work in other civil society and research organizations. And also Stephanie, who is a research associate at the Tarragona Center for Environmental Law, studies at the University of Ávila y Virgili, and she holds a PhD in law from the same university and has extensive experience in project management in different civil society and research organizations. So I'm really happy that they accepted our invitation to speak, and I give the floor to them. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Marina, for giving us the opportunity to take part of this wonderful webinar. We are really grateful for having this opportunity to share our experience in managing research projects in the field of international environmental law. So thank you so much. Before to start, I would like to say that Stephanie and myself are both researchers at the Center for Environmental Law Studies in Tarragona, CDAT in Spain, where Stephanie is also a project manager in, as she will explain later on. Our faculty, the Faculty of Legal Sciences at the Rovira y Virgili University, has promoted teaching and research in environmental law since it was founded in 1992. Our center was created in 2009 as a research center belonging to the Rovira i Virgili University and carries out a specialized training activities in environmental law, research activities, service activities for administrations and companies as well, and support activities for citizens, platforms, and non-governmental organizations that defend the environment. Our objective is the commitment to the environment and the adoption of an environmental justice perspective in our research projects, in particular taking into account the rights of the present and future generations. Our center has gradually become a reference for environmental law academics in Catalonia and in the rest of Spain as well. And of course, we seek to expand our expertise at international level. This is why we are committed to be involved in the research projects at international level. The experience and the knowledge acquired over the last years is made available always to society, mainly through teaching, by welcoming new students to our master's degree in environmental law every year, through research by opening new avenues of knowledge in the field of environmental law, and through transfer by providing solutions to practical problems that need to be solved in different social contexts. Stephanie, next, please. The outline of our session will be divided in six parts, six sections. First of all, we will introduce briefly our experience in international cooperation and international research projects in the field of international environmental law. Secondly, we will talk a little bit, maybe there will be some question that has been already referred by Professor Dote, but maybe I will be more concrete in some examples in a way to highlight some tips for designing a research grant proposal and some insights. Then I will refer to some ideas on outputs and report on results. And then Stephanie will deal with funding opportunities for collaborative and individual research and how to find partners and increase networks. And finally, we will explain a little bit about how to foster skills in project management. Starting, next please, starting with the first section on our experience in managing research project, I would like to mention three of them that we have developed so far. Perhaps the most successful according to social impact. The first one, it was the project coordinated by the Autonomous University of Barcelona, the project IJOLT, Environmental Justice Organization Liabilities and Trades. This project was funded by the European Union under its 7 framework financial program. This project was running from 2011 to 2015. The project supported the work of environmental justice organization, joining scientists, activist organization, think tanks, policymakers from the fields of environmental law, environmental health, political ecology, ecological economics to talk about issues related to ecological distribution. Central concepts were ecological debt or environmental liabilities and ecologically inequal change. We focus on the use of these concepts in legal science and in environmental activism and policy making as well. Next, please. Following with this line of research, focus more on environmental activism, we developed another successful project, was called Defenders. In this case, Defenders was funded by our National Research Authority, the Catalan authority, and the aim of this project was to give voice to environmental defenders, in particular those defending environment in many countries of Latin America. And the idea was to make their activity visible, to involve civil society and social agents in their protection, and to encourage alliances for care and protection of these people who are in the front line of defending the environment. The perspective was not only the elaboration of strategies of legal protection, but also to develop an integral protection of these people and the nature. Therefore, we develop a legal analysis of the right to defend the environment and the rights of nature from a comparative perspective. Next, please. And currently, I am developing the Clive Move project, a project funded by the European Commission under the Horizon 2020 program. The project addresses the challenging socio-legal avenues for the European Union to respond to climate migration from a gender-sensitive perspective. The objectives of this project are increase the most innovative and diversify social scientific skills to explore, recognize and understand the complex experience of migrant women in the context of climate change and of EU migration crisis. Female migration still often clashes with censorship, patriarchal laws, and lack of diversity of equality in countries of origin or even in destination. All these learnings are expected to be achieved through a comprehensive and a comparative analysis of current migration policies and laws among EU member states in terms of gender analysis and analysis to what extent they have been built from a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary perspective using an innovative feminist methodology, research methodology. Next, please. These were three examples of our experience developing international research projects. From these projects, we had got some learnings that we would like to share with all of you. In particular, some learnings on how to design research grants proposals. From our experience, the research design and methodologies used are the most integral part of a proposal. The first and most important ingredient of a successful proposal, according to us, is to have a meaningful and innovative research question. Any research must answer scientific questions that are yet unanswered, questions whose answer will advance knowledge of the application with the potential for generalization beyond a given environment or a given state of the art. In this regard, it's important to start with the definition of your research topic. In general, a good research topic is the one that should advance existing research, or the one that fills a gap in the existing research, or the one that develops a new line of research. Therefore, you should choose a topic that is significant enough in a certain field of research, that has a reasonable probability of success, and for which you can develop a viable research plan. For competitive proposals, as those coming from the European Union, for instance, the topic should add new innovative knowledge to the field and also to be repeatable and verifiable. So our suggestions are, first of all, think about the key research issues that are current in your area of research. Then investigate which research studies from top scholars in your field are currently researching. Then read the research that is out there and look for any gaps that you need to be filled. And finally, of course, make sure that your research topic is aligned with the funding priorities of the grant program which you are applying for. In addition, make sure that you understand any preferences or biases that the funding agency may have regarding different research methodologies. For example, some funders are more in favor of quantitative studies over qualitative research studies. Also, it's important to ask yourself how your research topic stands out from other research that has been conducted. Therefore, it's important to look at proposals that has been funded by the organization to which you are applying, and bear in mind what reviewers will be looked for. In general, reviewers will look to answer the following questions when reading your proposal. What is the research objective? Is this research objective significant enough? How will scientific knowledge be advanced as a result of the research? How will the research be carried out? How will the data be collected? How will the data be analyzed? Does the proposed data analysis align with the research questions posed? Are any limitations or problems clearly articulated? Do the principal investigators have the expertise to conduct the research? Do the principal investigators have the institutional resources needed to conduct the research? Therefore, your research design section should be as detailed as possible, should be as concrete as possible. Actually, you want to be sure that the reviewers can visualize how your research project will unfold from beginning to end. Think carefully through your entire research plan. It's really important, step by step, and submit this research plan as a part of your proposal. So it's really important to articulate, to elaborate this research plan. It's also important to include a project design section with the activities that will be needed to carry out with your research methodology, with a timeline for these activities and a list of deliverables expected. And of course, your research methodology section demonstrates your technical capabilities and skills to reach your claim-specific aims. So part of the research topic, part of the research questions, the research methodology is a kind of a blueprint of your research. The aim is to convince reviewers that you are brave enough to address the proposed research question through your chosen research design. The research design and methods are considered, according to our experience, the hard part of each research project. Normally, it has the larger impact score during the peer reviewing process. Of course, some calls are based on more training grants, more focus on the skill performance of the research, while others are mainly or strictly research grants that focus on achieving specific research objectives. Therefore, it's very important to understand the basics of research methodology and the ability to transform it into the grant proposal form. In my case, in my Marie Curie grant, the training action was the most important part of the research project. Is why I proposed several training actions with secondment periods to contribute in the acquisition of new skills, in particular to improve my training in interdisciplinary, intersectoral, and cross-national perspective of the gender, climate, migration research. Of course, in your proposal, in your research proposal, there is another important part, which are the resources in terms of human resources, material, or financial resources. The research design has to be realistic enough, viable, given the institutional resources available to you and the amount of funding that you will receive. It has to be realistic. In addition, the research design has to be aligned with the expertise of the principal investigators who are named in the proposal. This is really important. Just to summarize, next please. Very important to have a general vision of the overall picture of a project. It's not only the part to prepare the proposal, it's also the part of implement and to report the results. But before, it's important to get the project. So for that, we would like to give you some tips according to our experience in this designing part of research project. It means when you are submitting a proposal. First of all, I will recommend to read carefully the call. Dedicate time to make the research section as strong as it can be. Seek input from those who have expertise in your chosen methodology. Ask for feedback about the amount of technical information included in this section, as well as the coherence and flow of the section. Read the other proposal. It's really convenient to read other proposals, proposals that have already been funded, and see how the research design section is written. And also it's important to talk with the program officers and ask specific questions about expectations for what should be included in your research design section. For instance, in my case, it was very useful to be in contact with national contact points of Marie Curie actions. They provided me information, tips to improve my proposal. It was really useful. So don't hesitate to ask them, to use the official officers to improve or even to review your proposal. And finally, the last tip, the last recommendation is that if you don't succeed, it's very important to read carefully the reviewer comments and try to start and try it again. My suggestion is don't give up. Most of the times, second changes are the most successful ones. So don't worry about. It's a learning process. It's a learning process, and it's a way to foster and to enhance your skills in designing research projects. So don't give up. This is my last suggestion. Finally, in this overall picture, to manage your project when you get the project is really important. It's a very important part of the implementation of your research project is to have a communication plan in order to exploit and disseminate the project results. It means that the knowledge generated by your research project has to be disseminated and exploited, in particular through 3 main channels. It can be academic channels, such as publications, conferences, research seminars, open access databases like Zenodo or OpenAir. There are many open data databases that can provide you a good dissemination of your research outcomes. You can also use the policy communication, policy briefs with policy recommendations. We are really convenient to have a real impact of your research outcomes. And finally, also the civil society, which it could be a good way to disseminate your results through public events, press releases beyond the academia channels in order to advance and to disseminate your research outcomes and have more social impact. All this dissemination and exploitation of the research results are really important to be assessed by key performance indicators, KPIs, in a way to assess the impact of your research outcomes, in a way to identify the target audiences. It means the possibility to be able to communicate your project and its results among relevant stakeholders, academia, students, general public, and KPIs are used to evaluate the dissemination and communication achievements are really important. And also for that, I recommend you part of having a research plan. It's very important to have beforehand a communication plan in order to organize the dissemination activities. This is really important, and sometimes we don't be aware of this, the importance of such communication plan. But sometimes it's very important for providing a more social impact of our research. I think I will leave here by now, and Stephanie will continue giving you more information on our experience as project manager, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Susana. Good evening, good morning, good night, everyone. And well, I think Susana and Dr. Collins already gave us key ideas about projects and its management. So before starting my presentation, firstly, I would like to apologize for my voice because I've been ill for the couple of days. So I will try to be brief so as not to force it. And second, I would like to thank to Marina for the organization of this space to talk about our experience, but especially to the audience for their time and their presence. So as you can see from the slide and from what Susana already said, a project represents a lot more, and of course, it's only possible to address some aspects in a short time. So I will focus my presentation on funding opportunities, networking and partnerships, and some skills necessary to develop. But I would like to begin by telling you a little bit more about myself to understand my point of view and from which perspective I'm talking to. I'm originally from Mexico, and I came to Spain to do a PhD in environmental law at the Rovira Virginia University. While doing my last year of doctorate studies, until now, I have had the opportunity to work with an NGO of international cooperation named Engineering Without Border. And this NGO runs projects on international cooperation, especially in Ecuador, Mozambique, El Salvador, and also education for development projects in the north of Catalonia, in Catalonia. So I've been working as a consultant in this NGO, and once I finished my PhD, I joined the university at the Public Law Department as a technician of the Territory, Citizenship, and Sustainability Research Group. So as a member of the group, I provide support in the search and identification of sources of international and national funding for projects, in the preparation and justification of projects, and in the promotion and visibility of research activities, among others. So although I continue to work in research, I have a more technical profile where project management is a substantial part of my job, and it's a field that I consider it has a massive potential as a job opportunity after a PhD. So from my experience and from what has worked for us, I will talk about funding and partnership. Regarding the partnership, we can talk about collaborative research, and which means carried about the partnerships of or a group of organizations working together on a specific research areas, or individual researcher projects, such as the European Research Council grants for frontier research and the Marie Curie action that offer funding opportunity for individual researchers, as Susanna, or actually Susanna has one. So in collaborative research projects, basically there are two cases. The first one is when you already have an idea for project and wish to obtain funding for it through the grants. In the second case, the potential implementers aspires to implement the project designed by the funder by tender. So, so what avenues can we use? Depending on the characterization of the funder, we can make a differentiation between 4 areas: decentralized, bilateral, multilateral, or private finance. The institution below the state level provide this decentralized funding. So in the case of Spain, includes funding from body dependent on the autonomous communities, for provincial councils or city councils. For example, in Catalonia, we have the Catalan Agency for Development Cooperation. In this sense, we had the opportunity to run 2 projects as tenders, one in research and another in training. The research project involved studying the external impact of the government of Catalonia textile public procurement on human rights, gender, equity, and the environment. So in these 2 cases, we present our proposal to a tender procurement, and we were selected to carry out the project. But there are other ways to participate in this kind of projects. For example, as a subcontractors of a third entity sector, such as the Catalan Commission for Refugee Aid, or the Institute of Human Rights of Catalonia, or the International Action for Peace. So in this sense, I would like to remark on the importance of connecting academia and research with the tasks this organization developed. They provide us with a more authentic, current, and accurate vision of society problems and what is happening in them. So they bring us closer to the reality, allowing research to generate a more significant social impact and respond to actual needs. So basically with the with the Commission, we run projects on environmental human rights defenders and forced displacement. Some of them already, Susanna talked about it. And then we have also the bilateral funding or bilateral cooperation, where it's more national level, and it's, for example, the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation. We also have the Swedish International Development Agency. We have the United States Aid Development Agency. So it's you can just look at your country, what's the agency who rules the international cooperation policy, and you can find what are the calls or the funding available. And we also have and finally we have the multilateral cooperation, and I think this is the most important or to remark in this presentation, because the European Union through the European Commission is one of the main funders of the project. So we have when we are searching for opportunities, it's a fundamental aspect and a starting point for entry into the field, to know all the tools for detecting opportunities. So some key advices would be like search for information on the strategic lines and sectors and geographic areas of the main and preferred geographical areas on the main funding agencies. Search and identification of call for proposals from different web page. In this case is the European Union. And also it's a question, you have to look for projects that may be of interest that you are interested in, and you have to be really clear what's your idea, what's your interest, what's your knowledge and what you can offer, so you already know what you're looking for. So one of the main platforms to look for opportunities is the funding and tender portal, which is from the European Commission, and is the central shop for European funding. So it's very simple to just look for opportunities. Just click on the tender or grant, you decide, and then click on submission status. You can choose between open for submission, for comment, or close, and then filter the program. The main programs are the Horizon 2020, but we also have a live program very related to environmental issues, or in terms of international cooperation, we have the RELEX external action. So, okay, moving on. So how to find partner organizations, or how to create networking. I agree totally agree what Dr. Collins says about start with the knowledge, with the friends, with the networks that you already built, and keep in mind that in when you are creating or building this partnership, the interdisciplinarity of the teams and their intersectionality is really valued on the calls and the proposals. So I started with the people and institutions that you already know, those networks that you already built up through your professional career. And this is because we have first-hand reference on how people work and the level of reliability of the institution. So in our case, one of the strategies that work for us and that help us a lot to increase our network by geographical and disciplinary areas is the Tarragona International Environmental Law Colloquium, TIEC, that we organize annually. So this year is the 8th edition, and we take an advantage of this event to get closer to people we feel could be enriched to work in. Moreover, each year we address current environmental law challenge. This allows us to learn about what's the state of knowledge on the subject, and to then identify institutions working on the topic, as well as author for future collaborations. And also, this is like a really familiar event, which many young early career researchers and young researchers and doctoral students participate, and with whom we continue to contact over the time. So far, we have, there are more than 200 people that already participate in person or in hybrid way. So creating events or this kind of network is really useful to meet more people and to meet friends in these research areas. But sometimes the call requires you a specific type of profile that you don't know. And in these cases, you can also use platforms or applications for this kind of partners. For example, we have the Chromhalif or the Euro Access, which allows you to seek funding, job, or a house institution. Also, when a call is about to open at the European level, it organizes info days with the possibility of publishing a research profile and contacting other interests in applying to this call. So this could be another way to find partners. So why is necessary a partnership? Because it's difficult for a single organization or sometimes for a single person to meet all the requirements of the call for proposals. It's also difficult to carry out all the actions foreseen, and the multinational organization value contribute to the know-how and then transmit a wide range of experience. And also, you have to keep in mind that local partners can facilitate adaptation and favor cost containment. So finally, just some reflections about the skills that we think is important to develop, and especially in when you are in an early stage of your career, is like start by clarifying your priorities. I mean, try to clearly outline what research directions you want to take, and why this direction will advance the human knowledge in a significant and valuable manner. So you have to be really aware to detect this point or these gaps in the research areas. Also set up work plans. It means that you have to be able to manage multiple timelines and work stream and to manage to submit progress reports and abstracts on times and with the budget. So you can also use different applications to do this, and also to learn to be more efficient. And finally, set up also report structure that keep all the stakeholders updated, motivated, and accountable for progress towards common goals. So that would be all for my part, for all parts. So we can go to the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Susanna, for this fantastic presentation. It was great to hear a little bit more about your experience and also some like relevant issues such as like the social impact of the research, the importance of having interdisciplinary teams, interdisciplinarity in what we do, and also your suggestions. I'll open the floor for questions. So if you have a question, just please raise your hand or feel free to drop a message in the chat box. I see that there are two questions here in the chat already. So one was about the Defenders project. I see that Professor Susanna already shared the link, but maybe if you want to take this opportunity to just share a little bit more about how civil society has been engaged in the process. And I'm also really keen to hear like how, if you have any suggestions on how to better disseminate the results of the research, because I think this is sometimes we often struggle with on how, even like, for example, if we develop a policy brief, how do we make sure that the right people are reading this policy brief? So if you have any suggestions in that regard, that would be fantastic. And there is also another question in the chat about language. So sometimes there's this language barrier for specific calls, specific academic projects. So also if you have any insights or suggestions, or you want to talk a little bit more about your experience in addressing this language barrier, sometimes I know, especially in this European funded projects, when you have partners from different parts of Europe and also different languages, even when you're like having meetings or deciding on outputs, sometimes there might be like a challenge of like what has been understood and what you're actually going to implement. So also if you have any suggestions around that, it'd be great to hear. So over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for all the questions that are really interesting to us. I will answer the question regarding the Defenders project. Stephanie and I have been involved in this project. In fact, it was a group of projects dealing with the same topic. And the last one was Defenders, but before we had been in Latin America, in different countries of Latin America, particularly in Mexico, in Bolivia, in Ecuador, just learning new knowledge, how to take care of nature, to understand which rights we have to defend to protect nature, a different perspective from our anthropogenic view. It was more to learn about the ecological view to protect nature, but also we were really aware that those who defend nature are those communities, indigenous peoples. We are in the front line of environmental degradation. So it was really important to us to get involved these people, in particular in terms that one of the main outcome of our research was elaborate a guide a guide with proposal recommendations to several stakeholders, just to improve the protection of the rights of human rights defenders, in particular environmental human rights defenders. And for elaborating this guide, we involve so many defenders just to know, to understand, and to get knowledge, more learnings about the needs, the obstacles, the barriers that they face day by day in this right to defend nature. So the main outcome in this guide was to elaborate this integral strategy of protection, not only in terms of legal protection, but also to take care of themselves, to take care of their communities. And we wanted to highlight these learnings. It was not really our search outcome. It was more the civil society learnings to get into this guide. So it was a privilege for us to learn from these communities, a great opportunity. For this reason, even if this project, it wasn't a European project, it was just a national project, it was really important to us because it was really helpful to carry out further research on this line. And regarding to language, is always a barrier, but these barriers are also an opportunity to include this barrier into your project. It means that if you have several language, if you have several languages involved in your project, you always can foresee some budget to cover the translation expenses or other language needs to cover this obstacle. So sometimes it can be an obstacle, but also an opportunity. And also it's an opportunity, as I mentioned on the chat, it's an opportunity to increase culturally. I think always that when we have been the opportunity to be in an international project, we learn a lot of other cultures and other ways to see lives and to understand how to protect the environment, which is the most important for us. No? And civil society are a very important part of our research strategy. Always when we prepare a draft or an application, a research draft, we always try to involve the civil society, because we understand that this is the best way to have a more important social impact. I don't know if Stephanie, if you want to add something.
Yes, just briefly. I think one indicator of if a project is successful is the sustainability of the project. And in this project, it started like 4 years ago, and we keep going the same line because it's involving this research line, and it's continue growing. So I think this is a good sign that this project we could say that it's successful in terms of social impact, and also because it has a sustainability in the time. Regarding the dissemination, well, we realize that it's a task that consumes a lot of time, and also we need skills to communicate, and we're still learning. So it's not so simple as we at the beginning it seems so, because of course it's like you really need to develop some skills on communication, and in our cases we still learn it, but we use sometimes web page to communicate through the web page, the project, and sometimes the social networks, the Twitter and so on, but yeah, we're still working on and learning how to communicate better and how to reach more people, and I think that would be all.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Susanna. And yeah, I think communication is also a challenge. It's always a challenge, right? Especially because we have such like a diverse group of beneficiaries and people that we wanted to communicate our research to. And with also so many existing platforms, it's like different languages and different types of audience and different platforms. So yeah, just thank you so much for these insights. I just want to ask before we close if anyone from the floor wants to make any questions. And I think we also have a question for Professor Odotti in the chat. Let me just put Professor Odotti in the screen again as well. So we had a question about the size or prestige of universities that are part of networks, like whether the size of universities, the size of organizations are important. So for example, we have, like, for example, big and prestigious universities in Europe and the US, and some lesser known universities in Latin America, and whether the size and prestige matters when we are building networks or when we are thinking about projects. I think this can be a question for everyone as well, but Professor Collins, I see you're on the screen again.
Thanks. The answer is yes and no. I think at the end of the day, what is most important in my view in terms of developing networks are two things. One is the levels of collaboration that you're able to have with the different people, and two is the shared interest. I think for me that should be much more important than the prestige of the institution. That's number one. But number two, eventually, the reputation and status of the institution comes in terms of then knowing that you'll get people of certain qualities, you'll be able to then have processes that make sense. So I think eventually when you're looking for a network, the starting point should not be, I should be looking for a big university. The starting point should be, I am looking for a credible institution with partners who are competent. Those partners who are competent do not exist in big universities. They exist in all universities. So I think what should drive you is the interest. Eventually, when people judge the document, the first thing that they judge is not the reputation of the institutions. The first thing that they judge is the reputation and quality of the ideas that you put up in. And that for me is what's much more important. I think eventually when organizations are looking for partnership, they ask themselves, what do we share? Do we share history? Do we share an interest? Do we share culture? Do we share values? And that's what I think for me should drive you much more in looking for partnership, as opposed to I want to look for the biggest university. Because sometimes that biggest university may actually disappoint you in actual practice. Thanks. Susanna and Stephanie can also share their views.
Mhm.
Okay, I see. I think we are all in agreement. So thank you so much. Like, this was a fantastic exchange. I want to really strongly recommend everyone who's here to, if possible, attend virtually or in person the Tarragona Colloquium. I had a chance to be there in 2014. It was an amazing experience. So I really recommend. It's a great event. And also to all the speakers, if you want to share with me any of the materials, I'll be happy to share with the participants and also the other members of the Early Career Specialist Group. And I just really wanted to thank you for your time, viewers, and also people who are who's here with us, because today is a Friday and we had like 50 participants in the webinar, which was great. And I wish you a happy holidays and also a very good weekend. And let's stay in touch. And I'll be soon also sharing the link of the recording for those who may not have the chance to attend the whole session. And we'll also share more information about the next session of our webinar. But thank you so much once again, Professor Collins, Professor Susanna, Professor Stephanie. Thank you so much. And I wish you a very good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.